Hi, it's me, Dora V here, and today I'm going to talk about a movie. Yes, that's right, a movie. Yay! It's called I Care a Lot. And all this started when I saw an Emily D. Baker comment that recommended the movie due to what was and what had been happening to Britney Spears. Usually when I see a movie recommendation, I am one of those oddballs who just has to read the plot line and to watch some YouTube clips. Yes, I do this a lot. And so some people being spoiled makes them more likely to see the movie. I was one of those people. Because you see, reading a plot line and actually seeing it unfold are two different things. Others don't work that way, and that's okay. I generally do work that way. I saw this on Netflix some time ago, so considering that this movie came out on Netflix in February, yes, this is a Dora Come Lately thing, and yes, it is very common. I don't care. Anyway, this movie stars Rosamund Pike, who was just riveting as Marla Grayson, the kind of character that if you meet her, you'd love her. Yes, that's right, you love her! As long as you can't read her mind, or if you're not affected by her actions, if you're even aware of those actions, or if you even care. The things she says in the beginning is clearly internal monologue, but it doesn't take long to hear some of that externally. And that's just it, though. You only hear some of that externally. Whatever the case, Pike deserves her. She deserved her win. She deserved her Golden Globe win. It's just too bad that she was the only one who got anything. I feel like others like Diane Wiest, Asa Gonzalez, and Peter Dinklage should have at least earned a nomination, but that's just me. The vape thing was a nice touch. Yeah. To be honest, I was pleased to see it because I vape myself. However, I'm glad that it was removed because the vape shops getting Walmarted just didn't happen. It just doesn't happen that way. Not in my experience. The issue with vape shops is that certain regulations made it difficult for certain shops to stay in business. Vape Wild and Blue Dot Vapors were among the ones that closed, which is a shame because I love their juice. I actually, if you look at my previous videos, I have like a whole bag of Vape Wild. It was the last thing I purchased before they shut down, and I'm sad. So anyway, the point is that Walmart-like shops had nothing to do with the closing of vape shops. There are at least 10 vape shops within a 2-mile radius where I live, and a lot of online shops remain open. I have a theory that I have not seen, so I might be the only one with this theory. So, basically, Marla Grayson had a vape shop with a same-sex partner. But at the time, same-sex marriage was not legal. I don't think it was legal until 2012. It might depend on the state. It may have been 2014 federally, but in 2012, was it one of the states? I know about civil unions, I know that. But anyway, it wasn't legal until fairly recently. Because of this, they didn't have the same rights as opposite-sex couples, so inheritance can be a real issue, among other things. But anyway, in the case of illegal, invalid marriages, families can take everything. Anything joint, anything in the partner's house. A lot of people in same-sex relationships get no say in medical situations, funeral arrangements, and the family doesn't have to honor anything the same-sex couple might have in place. Except maybe a conservatorship, but it's possible that Marla didn't know about this at the time. So, when her previous lover/wife died, the family came in and swooped everything in the name of quote-unquote morality and fairness and playing by the rules. In this case, it could include biblical rules. And the family uses that as an excuse to take everything from Marla, including her vape shop. After all that, she meets Fran, who introduces her to the art of conservatorship. She helps her get the right connections, the right loopholes, the education required to get there. Marla chooses to specialize in elder care because some of the people in the anti-gay, moral, traditional values family were elderly. So, by exploiting the law's legal loopholes, Marla goes after that family, takes away the elders, most vulnerable, and legally steals everything the anti-gay family took from her. They would complain about how that's not fair. To which she would say, "Fair, you like that, don't you? You considered it fair when you took everything from me. You considered it fair when I was powerless to stop you. Fair to you is keeping people like me poor and powerless. Fuck fairness and fuck you too." Yeah. She then forbids the family from seeing the ones in the nursing homes, just as they refuse to allow her to see her lover. Wouldn't that be fair, though? She takes everything from them and makes a nice sum of money, which enable her to have a business of her own with Fran. After that, same-sex marriage is legal. But this clearly wasn't something that happened overnight, nor did she necessarily have anything to do with the law changes. Perhaps in that sense, she just got lucky. Yeah, that's my theory on her backstory. It's all just a theory, though, but I do feel like having something like that as a backstory could have worked better than just being Walmarted, but that's just me. Would have also extended the movie quite a bit, but maybe that should have replaced the mob stuff. Anyway, I did see the intro trailer, and I kept thinking that there's no way it's that easy. Turns out it can be, depending on where you live. This is a big issue in states like Nevada and cities like San Antonio, Palm Beach, Sarasota, Naples, and basically any area that has a large elderly population who are also affluent. Or if you are poor, well, here's how it works basically. If you are poor, lower income, you're pretty much safe as far as I know, but you'd clearly have different problems that have nothing to do with Marla. Anyway, her assessment of others like weak and scared and no one good, the comments about family, well, she's not entirely off on that. The reality, for example, is that most abuses and thefts are done by family. But she's falling under the same fallacies that all too many people fall into, and that is binary thinking or absolutist thinking, and we're all guilty of it, come on. This is her blind spot, and quite frankly, I suspect that she wants people weak and scared. No use arguing with people like her, though, because at best she doesn't have time. At worst, well, you'd be fighting for the rest of your life. That being said, when someone has such a negativist view, it's a red flag, because people like that are usually the ones who are shitty. Just like her, as you figure out early on. The point of the milligram experiment was that people weren't obeying because they were weak and scared. They were obeying because people are taught to cooperate with authority, and for the most part, that's a good thing. The issue is blind obedience, and I don't think very many people were blindly obedient. It doesn't help that at the time, only a certain group of men were tested. That being said, they were convinced that they were doing good, and that they wouldn't be facing any consequences. So, of course, people will cooperate if they're convinced that it's noble, righteous, and helping others. They will especially cooperate if they face no consequences or they're rewarded for it. Anyway, Jennifer Peterson was neither weak nor scared, and she never was. Just shocked. And what was she supposed to do anyway? Fight cops? People with backup? At the time, Jennifer had neither. Fighting back would have landed her in a jail cell. How is that weak and scared? To be smart and wise enough to know that you should cooperate. It's also possible to be one without the other, just like it's possible to be neither predator nor prey among humans. Or a bit of both, really. But anyway, nice house. Love the colors, especially since I love blue, and I love those knickknacks. And I have some Martioshkas and Fabergé eggs. Those are really pretty, but I'm nowhere near as neat as she is. Like, mine would just be a big pile. But anyway, the facility Jennifer was sent to looked really nice, too. Like a nice hotel, to be honest, but I think that only cements the gilded cage concept and how nice scams can seem. She clearly didn't belong there, and it's obvious that she wasn't the only one in that situation. Now, on to Peter Dinklage as Roman. He was perfect. Just straight up perfect. Looked perfect, acted perfect, his voice breaking when he finds out about his mother. As for Alexei, he has pretty eyes and wears pretty shirts, I'll give him that. Beyond that, I could see why he was shocked, but I also agree that he could have asked where she was. He could have tried. Anyway, going the legal route was a good move since he had the money to do so. The lawyer was excellent. He was basically Saul Goodman with better suits. However, he is wasted, and I find it hard to swallow that there wasn't a team of lawyers and tons of money involved. Starting out with $150,000, Should have started with a lot more. But then again, they didn't know that Marla is greedy. Once that's figured out, though, then the ante could have been up much sooner. The fact that she is greedy, though, does show that greed is not necessarily a good thing. Sorry, Wall Street, you're wrong. Being dominated by greed tends to lead to terrible choices, which she actually does make, whether she admits it or not. Now that I think of it, given the $150,000 bribe, that looks like that goes both ways. Like maybe the mob's being a bit greedy too. So anyway, I love this quote. I am the worst mistake you'll ever make. See, Jennifer Wickenscared? Nah. Diane Wiest is legendary. By the way, I remember her from the great 80s movies like Parenthood, Hannah and Her Sisters, and Edward Scissorhands. Anyway, she's wasted too. She was the mother of a mob boss, and it seemed obvious to me that she was powerful in the Russian mob. Oh, speaking of which, when I found out that A Care a Lot took place in Boston, found out after seeing the movie, to be honest. In fact, I'd learned like quite a while later. I didn't actually like that because I felt like it would have made more sense if it took place in Nevada or a place like Palm Springs, Florida, or San Antonio, Texas. Basically states areas where the laws and conservatorships are very lax for whatever reason, but if it had to be Boston, then why the Russian mob? Why not the Irish mob? They're just as violent, if not more so. Nevada would have had the Italian mob, but why a mob at all? The more I think about it, the more I realize that Peter Dinklage could have been utilized differently. How about a businessman with a whole lot of money, and this could have been just a dark comedy drama? No mob or superhero hijinks that relied on luck and implausible incompetence needed. Then again, this movie is a dark comedy first and everything else second. Comedy plays by different roles, just like fantasy, sci-fi, and comic books do. Well, speaking of playing by the rules and fair and square, I had to laugh at that one. She was playing by the rules, but only because she was able to stack the rules in her favor through loopholes and allies. I believe the judge was in on her scheme. The doctor, who, by the way, was a legit friend and not just some cohort, and obviously the guy who ran the nursing home. And as for fair, remember what she said about that? How it's a concept created by the wealthy to keep people in poverty? And really, poverty doesn't agree with anyone except for monks. However, if you think she'd be fighting for systemic changes that benefit the masses, then, in my opinion, you'd be mistaken. The only changes she wants would be whatever benefits her and those worthy of her, and nothing for everyone else, except bad changes. Anyway, I guess the judge was one of the ones worthy of her, because I'm almost positive that he's taking bribes of some sort. I don't believe that he's blind, incompetent, or stupid. One person I did forget was the doctor. Her death would explain why Marla acted the way she did toward Jennifer and the mob. She wasn't exactly cold when she found out about Dr. Amos's death. I remember the shock, the panic with Fran, and how upset she really was. I don't think that was fake. They were ready to run but chose not to. I don't lose. I won't lose. I also recall her saying, I don't like to lose. Nobody likes to lose. I never met anyone who did. Lose can mean a lot of things, and just as easily include the loss of a friend, ally. So, life does get a little more difficult for both Marla and Fran, as the former is kidnapped and the latter is beaten and left to die by a gas stove, or something that an actual mob would have never done. Anyway, 1807. I've heard that argument from Penn Jillette, only he used 1908, if I recall correctly. This was about death, and why Marla doesn't fear that. Where were you in 1908? Nowhere. Why fear that? Only thing is that once you're dead, you no longer get to enjoy whatever you have, but I'll get to that later. Love the Jimmy John's reference. I love Jimmy John's. I wanted to sub the moment it was mentioned, but yeah, for someone with the 1907 mentality, 1807, of course it makes sense that they wouldn't fear death, but maybe it's not death itself that's feared. I do appreciate that religion is not brought into this. Well, I mean, I know my theory does that, but whatever. But anyway, it would have been a hot mess. Yeah, now that I think of it. Yeah, Marla would have ripped that apart. As for her mother, the reaction didn't surprise me one bit. I long suspected she likely ruined her own family, whether they were sociopaths or not. What's ironic is that her mother is walking free, poor or not. People complained a great deal about the crash scene, and I could see why. The mob could have easily made it look organic. They force-fed alcohol, so they could have easily killed her through poisoning. But that didn't happen. People also made it clear that there's no way she would have suddenly woke up with chloroform and alcohol. I get that too, but I kept thinking that this is a dark comedy. Realism is for newspapers and documentaries. It's also for more dramatic movies, like, say, Steel Magnolias, but anyway, I will admit that those who know better could find the whole thing jarring. Love the gas station scene after that, though. She just gave no fucks, and the tooth in the milk thing was a nice touch, too. Turns out that putting a tooth in milk prevents the roots from rupturing, so it's easier for the dentist to replace it. And hey, milk does a body good. I love the colors on all the scenes. That is one thing this movie has a lot of: style. I love the style. As we're going after him instead of running, I found myself not really blaming them, because that had long ceased being an option. Really, it could have been prevented if she had taken the bribe money to begin with, but then the movie wouldn't have been the same. Then again, if the Russian mob was more realistic, then everything would have been moot. Too late for all that, because at this point Marla's right. Even if they do run, they'd be looking over their shoulders forever. So Marla and Fran hatch a plan to infiltrate the mob and kidnap Roman, making him a John Doe, and become his conservator. This, of course, works, and Roman offers to make her a partner of a corporation that would make many millions of dollars off the backs of the elderly, the disabled, and who knows who else. A lot of the elderly were actually fine, but because of the loopholes, well, Marla happens. The ending honestly surprised me. I really expected her and Fran to get away with it as a married couple, since at this point same-sex marriage was legal. The director/writer even admitted that he had some montages that showed them getting away with it and what they do, but he felt like it wouldn't have worked. I guess he wanted things to come full circle and added some irony, because no way Marla saw that guy coming, and there he was with a gun, which is the ultimate equalizer. Bullets kill lions and lambs alike. Guns can make prey into predators. Humans are not so easily categorized, nor do they necessarily stay the way they are. Someone like Marla might, but others, not so much. Yeah, that was in reference to the red hat guy, the guy who just wanted to see his mother. You see him in the beginning, going to court, and yeah. Anyway, I did have questions about Fran, like, wouldn't she inherit everything? Would Roman be willing to work with her? Some theorize that the mob would simply take her and take everything. The director says, well, she does inherit everything and takes over Marla's work. He said it was like a Hydra. Well, Hydras can be killed if you burn the stumps. That being said, I think Fran would be even worse than she is now, or is in the movie, because she lost someone she truly did love. Even if she wasn't married, Marla's family wouldn't have a snowball's chance in hell in getting much of anything, because no doubt Fran would have fought tooth and nail, and given the amount of money at stake, she could and would, especially if Roman decides to back her, and I don't doubt he would have. Would have been interesting to see something like that happen, but given what I said about Marla's theoretical backstory, but that would have derailed the movie and make it even longer. Yeah, yeah, that would have really, yikes. But I mean, that's moot though, because they did get married, so yay. Anyway, no, I did not see the shooting coming. I don't think anyone did. People were happy to see it, and I can't say I blame them. Some go so far as to say he should have shot them both, which is very understandable, especially since one of the romantic scenes involved a victory, and it made me wonder if they actually do take pleasure in ruining the lives of others. In the case of Marla, whatever wealth she gained didn't last long, because when you're dead, it means you don't get to do anything anymore. For someone like Marla, their greatest fear is the loss of control. So a fitting end would have involved something like that. Maybe a loss in court, or she could end up in the same position Jennifer ended up in. Death is the ultimate loss of control, and she knew it because you can see it on her face. All she had to do was let the guy see her mother, but she simply didn't see this coming. Typical. Just like it's pretty typical that people like that skate, but, well, she didn't. So overall, I like the movie just fine. If I had to give it a rating, it'd be 7 out of 10. Yeah, 7 out of 10. Good, but not great. It could have been great, but it wasn't. It was well acted, well made, lovely use of colors, stylish, but something was missing. It just seemed shallow to me and honestly felt safe, like he's trying to avoid offending anyone, and it didn't really work. The impact of the abusive guardianship really only scratched beneath the surface. The mob stuff was not necessary, and it could have been replaced with a Britney Spears-like court drama. Any hijinks could have been done through a Hackers-like scene. Remember Hackers? Anyone from the 90s remember that movie? The scene where they're on the Empire State Building making life difficult for an agent. Want comedy? That would have provided plenty of comedy. Court with hacking, that would have been great. At least to me. So what I took from this is that no, ambition is not evil. There is evil everywhere. It's what you do once you attain those goals that determine good and evil, and even then it depends on who you ask. Wanting power isn't the problem either. Power creates change. Power makes a lot of things easier. It also reveals character, not just change it. Again, what would she have done with the power she attained? Honestly, I think she almost certainly would have abused that power. That's the bad, scary part. Never, ever assume that someone who came from a poverty, marginalized, etc., is necessarily on your side. She's certainly not a feminist icon, just like the bearded gunner was not a misogynist. He was simply a frustrated person who lost his mother. He used sexist language, but that was out of anger and not because he looked down on women, and we really don't know much about him anyway. As for Marla, I could see her being all for The Handmaid's Tale, as long as she's not the one in the red or gray. I could see her and Fran enjoying same-sex couple rights for themselves, while having no problem seeing it taken from others. As long as anti-gay policies don't affect them, or really anti-same-sex marriage, but whatever, but as long as they're not affected by anti-gay anything, they're fine. With the money power she had, the ones who run their mouths about degeneracy won't do a damn thing. The point this movie is trying to make is that even though the system is now more inclusive, all it means is that gays, women, blacks, formerly poor, can now be every bit as exploitive as the quote-unquote straight white man, or those already wealthy. The system itself and the culture it created is the real problem. Nightcrawler addresses the same thing, but according to the audience, it does a much better job, as does 99 Homes or Houses or something like that. As for human nature, honestly, that doesn't mean anything to me, as it's yet another term thrown around to suit whatever argument people want to use. Marla was never meant to be anyone's icon, except maybe objectivists and ANCAPs, and even then, I said maybe for a reason. You were never supposed to root for anyone in this movie. You were never supposed to care about them. You were, however, supposed to care a lot about the laws set up that make these kinds of conservatorships happen, like what happens in Nevada. If it was any consolation, the Marla Grayson types are not prevalent. Common, sure, but in most cases, these things don't happen. Not like that. Also, most guardian role abuse is done by family. Just ask Britney Spears. Like, I also said that in the beginning. So really, it's not Marla that should be feared, but other family members. Paranoid yet? But like I said, most are not abusive and really do act in the best interest of the ward. Too bad Britney Spears is trapped with a Marla. Only it's her own father. Of course, that's just my opinion, right or wrong. It's been fun. See you later. Goodbye.